Please welcome the only author who has reached the #1 New York Times bestsellers list in 5 different genres, a great Bush family friend, Mr. Brad Meltzer.
The last time I was here in Houston with the Bush family was at President Bush's funeral. And as someone who's buried both of his parents, someone told me, they said, don't just go to the funerals, go to the good things. And it's why I'm here tonight. And I think this is one of the good things, and I love that we're all together again. And just a huge thank you to the Bush family and to Julie and everyone that puts on this incredible event. I've been to so many of them. I think I have the record because I did the count, and I've been to 1 million of these. So that's the best part. I'll tell you that the book they wanted me to talk about is The Lightning Rod. It's my newest thriller. And I found the main character, and I stand here today because President and Mrs. Bush used to love my thrillers, and they would write me letters. And every time a new one would come out, they would write me a letter telling me how good it was. And I knew it was good because even Mrs. Bush didn't even tell me how bad it was. And I love no criticism. And when I wrote The Lightning Rod, I was looking for that main character. And the main character, I was in this warehouse, a government warehouse, filled with art. And I was like, why does the U.S. Army, why does the government have all this fancy art? And they explained to me, and this is true, that since World War I, the U.S. Army has had a painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen. And I said, and from storming the beaches of Normandy to Vietnam to 9/11, and I said, you're telling me everyone else is racing in with guns blazing, and you got someone who's racing in with a paintbrush in their pockets. That guy sounds crazy. I want to meet him. I got to meet him. And they said, you mean her. You want to meet her. And that's where Nola, who is the lightning rod because she attracts so much danger, came from. And that's where the star of the book came from. And everyone loves her because she's like this new girl with the dragon tattoo. But for me, what I always write about, and I start with, are my own fears. And so in the opening scene of the book, you have a character who hands his car keys over to a valet at a fancy restaurant. And the valet takes the car, but instead of parking the car, he takes the little button, hits the little button on the steering wheel for the GPS, and he says the magic words, go home. Now all of you are thinking about your car right now, aren't you? Hope you like the valets out there. And the valet starts riding to the guy's home. He's got his car keys, got his house keys on there too, because he's going to rob him. This is a robbery. And when the valet walks into the man's house, he sees that there's another man waiting there with a gun, because this isn't a robbery at all, it's a trap. And when his body goes to our hero, something is found on the body that no one's meant to see. It leads to one of the government's most closely guarded secrets. And I just ruined chapter 1 of The Lightning Rod for you. That is chapter 1. It's a disaster, right? And the thing is, there's only 2 chapters in the book. Everyone dies. That's really... But what I want to talk about is, obviously, what I think the Bushes, what President Mr. Bush used to love about the books is the research. And I've researched books with them for many years. And in this book, I found out, and this is true, the government has a dozen top-secret warehouses hidden all across the country to deal with bioterror attacks, whether it's smallpox or anthrax or anything else. And it means that if there's an attack in New York, in California, here in Houston, within hours, the government will have antidotes right here. And I said, you're telling me that the government has secret warehouses hidden all across the country, nobody knows what's inside them, nobody knows where they are, and nobody can go inside? I want to go inside there. And so when you get to the end of the book, and I won't ruin the end of the book, it's a whodunit, and when you read that ending and you see whodunit, it takes place in one of these warehouses. But I will also tell you that what you see in the warehouse, I didn't make up. What you see there is really there. And that, to me, is the fun. So when I wanted to figure out, I asked a friend of mine who is one of the top people, used to be one of the top people in one of the great security organizations for our country. And I said to him, how do we send secret emails to each other anymore? When everyone can read our email, everyone knows all of our secrets now. And he said, you're right. He said, the moment you hit send, I don't care if you use WhatsApp, he said to me, I don't care if you use Signal, the moment you hit send on your email, anyone who has a good de-encryption program can take what you wrote and find it and can take it apart. And he said, but here's what you're going to do, Brad. Here's how you're going to get around it. I want you to open a Hotmail account. And in that Hotmail account, I want you to write an email to me, but don't hit send. Instead, I want you to hit save drafts. And then you're going to give me the login to your email at that Hotmail account. I'm going to go into your account. I'm going to open up the drafts folder, and now I'm going to see that email you wrote to me. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to write back something to you, and I'm going to hit save draft. And now you and I are having a conversation back and forth, and nobody will ever see it. Nothing's been sent into cyberspace. And it's a great idea, right? Until General David Petraeus used that idea that's in the lightning rod to cheat on his wife with his mistress. And I said to my buddy, I'm like, that's the idea you gave me. You can't give that to him. How'd you give that? And he goes, I know. I'll give you a better one. So do not cheat on your spouses when you read this book. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not what you're here to learn. But what you see in the book, I didn't make up either. And that's obviously the fun of the book. But what I also came to talk about, and they asked me to talk about, and this is going to be the best transition because I just talk about murder. So let's talk about your children and children's books. Because I also write children's books, and I have kids. And yes, I murder people all day long like Alifair. That is what we do. We truly murder people all day long. We're really fun at parties. But I had kids, and I wanted to give my kids better heroes to look up to. I wanted to give my kids heroes of kindness and compassion and perseverance, humility. Remember when humility was a great American value? I learned it from this family right here. And we've lost it. We need to get it back again. So I started with I am Amelia Earhart. We did I am Abraham Lincoln. I am Rosa Parks. I am Albert Einstein. My son loves sports. I said, forget a millionaire overpaid athlete. Here's a real hero. I did I am Jackie Robinson for him. And what I love is that people use our books today to fight back against the cynicism they see. They've told us that we have, with 5 million books in print now, that no one is educating more kids about histories and the values of our heroes than we are in the Ordinary People Change the World series. And no, I appreciate that. But what I want to talk about is the 2 newest heroes, because the books have never been about history. And you'll see here's I am Muhammad Ali, which is on the back of every book we always put the moral lesson. So on the back of I am Amelia Earhart, it says, I know no bounds. On the back of I am Abraham Lincoln, it says, I will speak my mind and speak for others. And on the back of I am Muhammad Ali, it says, I will always fight for what I believe. I want my daughter to have that lesson. I want my sons to have that lesson, to fight for what they believe, especially now in America. And the book that I brought to end with is this one, I am Malala Yousafzai. And I brought her because she reminds me so much of Mrs. Bush. And you'll see why. And Malala, when she's a little girl, the Taliban says they don't want her to learn and to read. They don't want her to get educated. Girls cannot be educated where she's growing up. They're terrified that if she gets educated, she will become strong and powerful. And they're absolutely right. And that's, of course, what she does. And when they shoot her, and they literally try to silence her, they want her to be quiet. She will not be quiet. And I'm going to read you this very short passage. And I want you, when I read this, this is what it says in I am Malala Yousafzai. But I want you to think about Barbara Bush for a moment. I want you to think of her as I read this. It says, I'm an ordinary girl whose life was transformed by teachers and learning. There are millions of others who need similar help. That's why I will not be quiet. The world doesn't change unless you speak up. Use your voice. Help those who need it. As I said at the United Nations, we must believe in the power and the strength of our words. Our words can change the world. Let us pick up our books and our pens. They are our most powerful weapons. I am Malala Yousafzai, and I know that education helps us all soar. And I'll leave you with this final story. When President Bush, right before he passed away, what no one knew is that they were bringing in some of his favorite writers to read to him right before he died. And I was one of the ones who got the call. And I was in Kennebunkport at the time, and I went in, and the Secret Service said to me, listen, you're going to read for about 5-10 minutes. That's all. He's going to fall asleep. He's going to sleep right after that. I said, no problem. I'm honored to be here. And I knew this was the end. I could see just looking at him. And the Secret Service left. It was just myself and my wife, President Bush and his service dog, Sully. And I picked up a copy of one of my books that I had written called The First Conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill George Washington, a nonfiction book that he had so kindly helped blurb because he liked the book. I said, sir, you want to read this one? Because it was on his desk, and it was a dog-eared, like it had been read over and over. And he said, mm-hmm. You can't speak anymore. It's mm-hmm or uh-uh. And I start reading, and sure enough, 5-10 minutes in, he's fallen asleep, and I'm just honored to be there, so I'm just going to finish the chapter. And the chapter I brought to him was the scene where George Washington has the Declaration of Independence read to his troops for the very first time. And he's sleeping, and I get to those words we all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And in that moment, President Bush's eyes pop open, and he's locked on me. It's like he's gotten an infusion from the Declaration itself, right? Truly, you know, those who knew him knew it works. And I get to the end of the chapter, and he's still wide awake. I say, "Sir, you want to read another chapter?" "Mm-hmm." Get to the end of that one. "You want to read another, sir?" "Mm-hmm." And another? "Mm-hmm." And instead of being there for 5 or 10 minutes, I'm there for an hour. And at the end of the hour, I, of course, say goodbye to him. I know I'm never going to see him again. I thank him for everything he's done for me for all these years as being one of the readers that he's just brought into his world and his universe. And to have that moment where I get to read about the very first president who at that point was the oldest living president of these United States is one of the great honors of my life. And I just want to publicly thank the Bush family. We never told that story for years, and then Gene Becker finally said, "I want you to tell the story. People need to hear it." So thank you to everyone there. I'll tell you, I'm going to end with this. This is how I'm going to pay you back. Is in a couple months, with the charity I write, we're going to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest book that's ever been created. And the book is called, and again, where are we going to do it? It's here. It's going to be called I Am Texas. And I want you to show you, I'm going to show you in a moment, look who I put on the cover. There she is. So, we are all part of that Bush legacy right now. Thank you very much for joining me here tonight.